recording to start. Awesome. Okay, so we talked yesterday about the two ways of translating transactions off the bank statement to legible cash flow codes. We looked specifically at mapping rules, and you each built out a rule. So if we look at Michael's, for instance, all your rules were similar, right? Bank complementary info equals Clearsulting, BTC equals 195. What does that mean? So when we have a wire and it says Clearsulting, we know that means the flow code, aka the how, was plus wire. Budget code, aka the Y, was some kind of Kyriba credit that we got. Okay, cool. Now, when you built this out, right, the way we did it, we clicked add to add a rule. We clicked syntax assistant, and then we plugged in the variables that we want the system to consider when building that if-then statement, right? So again, like you could do 495, you could just do a simple rule like this that says when the code is 495 minus wire, and maybe like minus miscellaneous items. Fine, that's fine. Again, I like having the minus sign, the disbursement sign first, but it's trivial. So you could build a rule as simple as that, or as complex as, you know, when it's 495 and the description and the complementary info says X and the account is Y, so on and so forth. Now, we talked a little bit about just the one rule, but we didn't talk about how mapping rules are organized or how to build out mapping rules in bulk. So I want to make sure we touch on both of these concepts because they're very important. Firstly, in terms of the organization of your rules are hierarchical. Let me give you an example of this. So let's build a rule for BTC 195. Let's just call that miscellaneous. Okay. Let me move this one down for simplicity. We have two rules that share some syntax, right? They both say if BTC is 195. Which rule, one or two, is more specific? One, exactly, right? How do we know? Well, one is longer, first and foremost. You can just visualize the difference, right? And secondly, if we interrogate the details, you can see this one has information about the description, whereas this one is just merely if the bank code is 195. Okay. It is extremely important that the more specific rules sit on top of the more general rules. Based on what we discussed yesterday, anyone want to fancy a reason that that's the case? Why do you think
Was
it's
it that? Was it that like Kyriba will go through the more specific things first and then kind of like funnel down?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we saw with the BTC set applicability, right? We said, how does Kyriba know which applicability to read first? And we said these are the most specific rules because they're very granular. They're at the account level, right? And then Kyriba kind of works leftwards and says, okay, the next rules in terms of specificity are these two. And then the last rule it'll check if none of these five apply, is this bottom one, which is our catch-all. So in this, exactly, Olivia, in this instance, we saw that there's some like predetermined logic that Kyriba says, okay, specific rules are this column, second most specific are this column, third most are this column, and then the least specific is this catch-all. Mapping rules, somewhat similar, somewhat different. Mapping rules have a rank. Okay, so the system doesn't automatically say this is more specific than that. You have to place the more specific rules on top and the more general rules on bottom. Okay, so if we had a rule structured like this, when will rule 2 apply if our mapping rule set is structured like this?
Never.
Exactly. Why never?
Because 195 gets caught in the first rule.
Yep. So the system will never have an opportunity to scan this more specific rule because it's the first rule that applies. Kyriba is going to take the code. Okay, so we have to be very deliberate when building our rules to make sure, and you can see you can drag and drop, or you can click these buttons like move to bottom, move to top. We have to be very deliberate to make sure that our specific rules sit on top and the more general catch-all rules are on the bottom. Make sense? Excellent. So that's the first piece that we didn't get to cover yesterday. The second piece is, wow, there are a lot of bank transactions that we need to account for. And while the syntax assistant is indeed helpful, it does assist, it is kind of a pain, right, to build out. If you can imagine, clients have thousands of rules. Can you imagine building these out one by one? There has to be a better way, right? Sure, there is. So how do we bring about that better way? You can print right from the screen. What should I click now that I clicked print? How do I get the thing that just, sorry, go ahead.
The taskbar?
Yep, this time it didn't blink for me. So here's an instance where I have to click refresh. And now you can see it's kind of pulsing. We click this icon. Here's my print in Excel. Let's hit the Excel icon. Okay. All right. So now we have an Excel breakdown of these rules, which would allow us to do a few things. We can drag down this rank if we want to build. Let's just do 10 rules, make it nice and even. 10 rules. And we could drag down something like this and change the BTCs. Okay. But even this is a bit manual. So we could talk through this in a little bit. But for these instances, okay, this is minus check. And this will just say, oh, do miscellaneous disbursement. This is minus summary. Always put a little apostrophe here, or Excel doesn't like it very much. No budget code there because it's just merely a summary. This is minus ZVA, or this is plus ZVA, so on and so forth. So we could build rules like this. Sorry, this should be over here. So on and so forth. So now, once we built out our rules here, we can select everything with a value. We'll see to copy. Back to Kyriba. Click this white space so your browser knows where you're trying to enter data. Control V to paste. V is in Victor. Our columns are lined up. I don't know if these are valid codes, so we'll see if any of them take. Click the check mark. Ugh. They want these zeros. Fine. Click the X to kill what we were trying to paste. Do it again. Click the check mark. Okay. Now you can see my 475 entered. So you can see the debit flow code didn't take. I tried to do minus check. So it would be good to reference the existing flow codes in the system. Let's see what it should have been. Minus check clearly doesn't exist. We don't even have one for check. Oh, there you go, check minus. Point is, we can copy and paste these rules quite easily. So this is one way of doing it, kind of just building them out one by one. The ideal way of doing this, we have an accelerator, which we can share with you at a later time, that has some built-in concatenation logic. Do we all know what concatenate means? Concatenate just means like combine things together. So it's an Excel formula. So let me give you an example of how this looks. Why is this not copying for me? What is going on with my Excel? Okay. Oh, my Excel froze. So annoying. Okay. Something we hand over to clients could look like this, where we say, let's build rules for just the BTC code. These would be like more generic rules. So let's look at your transactions and let's fill in the codes that are applicable to your transaction. So like 115, 120, 135, et cetera, et cetera. Just do something like this. Okay. And then what we have is logic that says concatenate. You should learn this formula if you don't know it. It's very easy. Just concat these three values. Now here's our rule in the Kyriba format. Drag that down. Normally won't have decimals, but you get the idea here for this demo. And this is how we can build rules out really fast. You don't need just this BTC code. You can have something like if the bank complementary info equals blank, and then they can fill that info in as well. And then all we're going to do is just assign the appropriate flow and budget code with their help, and then copy these rules in. And that's how in like a 1 to 2 to 3 hour working session, you can build out like the foremost layer of mapping rules for your client. So key takeaway here is mapping rules are hierarchical, which we just discussed. Mapping rules can be added manually. Mapping rules can be copy and pasted just by merely editing the input value and plugging in the codes. And mapping rules can be copy and pasted in an accelerated manner by using our in-house workbook, which I said I'll share, but that has concatenation logic to kind of streamline the code creation and create a better user experience for the client. Questions? How are we with Excel? Do we feel pretty comfortable with it? We have some learning to do.
I feel okay with it, but there's always learning to do. So
Okay.
I'll brush up on my skills.
Definitely grab, you can like Google most helpful Excel cheat, like a cheat sheet. Most helpful Excel shortcuts, like knowing how to filter really quickly, right? Knowing how to like select all really quickly, like that
Yeah.
stuff. It's important not only because it's going to make your life easier, but when we're on a call with a client, most clients work exclusively in Excel, and it doesn't look good when we're like fiddling around with Excel trying to sort, for instance, right? We want to make sure that we look sharp and polished. Okay. Any questions about mapping rules? Okay. Very good. Onwards then. So we talked quite a bit about setting up the bank module. Now let's talk about what you do once the bank module is set up. Okay. The most fundamental screen in the bank module that clients could use every single day is in home, cash and liquidity, bank statements. And please follow along if you can. Inquire, integrated transactions. So this is the bank data, right? If everything loads as expected, you'll be able to see all the transactions as well as all your summaries, initial balance, final balance, available balance, all that kind of stuff. You'll see it all sitting in this screen. Okay. So just to give you a quick example, and then we'll dive into these templates and just back this up a little bit. Okay. This is an account that I loaded for demonstration purposes. So let's just walk through what this screen is telling us, column by column, for the most part, and then we'll talk about setting up templates. So here we have a client. They're banking with Citi. They only have one account right now. This is just like the beginning of implementation, right? It's the account, Kevin Stevens, account A. We just want to make sure that one account loads as expected. So this looks promising because we have data, but what does this data actually tell us? First and foremost, statement type. We can have two options here, end of day or
Prior day?
prior day is end of day. Prior end of day means what happened yesterday.
Intraday.
Yeah, intraday, exactly. See the two options here? So this is prior day statement. So this was published after the 12th. It's about data for the 12th. I think the 12th was a Friday. No, it was a Wednesday. So this would have come into the system sometime on the 13th to report the data on the 12th. Okay. Okay. So prior day, transaction date, everything is the 12th. Transaction date means when the transactions occurred. This is an important distinction for the Kyriba test. So when did the transaction actually occur? The 12th. Direction, C and D, what does that mean?
Credit
Credit
debit.
and debit.
Bingo, very good. And you could see C aligns to this column, D aligns to this column. Super. If I want to pivot and see how many credits and debits I had, remember you can pivot on any data point, drag down, very helpful. Currency is self-evident. Debit amounts are in one column, credit amounts are in another column. Value date. Anyone know the difference between transaction and value date? Accountants care about transaction date, treasurers care about value date.
Is value date when the money actually hits your accounts?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Transactions when the transaction occurred. Value date is when the money is settled. So if there's like an ACH, sometimes the money doesn't come into your account for like a day or two. Checks can get presented but not like hit your account yet. So sometimes you see a difference between transaction and value date. It's very important when we're forecasting, say like, okay, money, we made a payment today, but it's not going to be settled until two plus days or plus 2 days. The test loves to ask this question. Accountants care about transaction date. Treasurers care about value date. I know I said it, but I'll say it twice. Bank is just the bank associated with this particular account. In this instance, it's Citi. BTC. So now we're starting to see the concepts we reviewed yesterday, right? So BTC stands for, I saw your lips there, Michael. It looks like you said bank transaction code. Very good. BTC description. How does the system know what the proper description is for each BTC? Where's that set up?
That are cash flow codes?
No, the BTC is the bank's language, B for bank, right? So the cash flow code is Kyriba language. But how did it know 040 means opening available balance? It's not actually written on the bank statement.
We loaded them all into, I forgot what it was called.
Yeah,
But they're standardized.
exactly. So we loaded all the BTCs into the database. Here it is, right? 040. We told the system that means opening available balance. If I said opening available balance, make it really exciting, right? And then I reloaded this. Let's see. So this setup drives the descriptions we see in the bank module. And the way we got all these descriptions to auto-populate, how do we do that again? How do we get all these BTCs in the system? Do we add them one by one? What do we do?
Initialize automatically?
Via
Menu?
Good, exactly. Perfect. Good job, Josh. All right, super. So here's our BTCs. Here's our BTC description. Internal code just is the same as the BTC. Nothing to talk about here. Type. The system knows whether something is a balance or a transaction. Okay. So that is an important distinction here. So if we wanted to just say, show me just my final balances for all my accounts, you could just do a quick pivot and see this closed at 0. Okay. And then you could see flow code. So this, Josh, to your point earlier, this is the Kyriba language, right? So we could see what happened. Kyriba took in a transaction like total ACH 140. Remember yesterday it said we said it had the word total in it. So that means the summary code. So this is a good instance of the mapping working, right? Here we had an ACH debit, 455, so money left the account, and Kyriba automatically knew this is miscellaneous debit. Now this mapping is imperfect, right? You could see like these 195s are just called 195. Remember we said that's not ideal. That's the old way of doing things, right? Why is that not helpful? Because all we did was say 195 is plus 195. We didn't do anything beyond that. No extra information. Not very useful. Something like this is far better. The 495 maps to minus wire, because then we don't need to memorize what 495 means. We could just say, okay, what was this transaction? Just look at the flow. It was a wire. Okay. So all of this happens every single time a bank statement loads. We interpret the BTCs. We memorialize the activity in Kyriba. So this is totally auditable, preserves all your bank statements in one place, and it starts to take the bank's language and translates it to a language that we want. You can imagine how helpful this is, right? On a day-to-day basis. So that like when you wake up, not only are all your bank statements in the system, but they're also categorized in a meaningful way. Remember, the alternative is waking up, logging into 10 different sites, downloading all the data, crunching it in Excel, and spitting it out into a worksheet that probably won't have this level of granularity. Additionally, there's a budget code column. So you could see here that this statement did not actually map the budget codes. So this would be less than ideal, right? Because ideally we would say not only is this minus wire, but this is also minus implementation costs or something like that. So we don't have a full understanding of what happened here. And we're gonna work to get this today. Couple other important points. Status. This is very important for BAI statements that have summary and transaction codes. So we have two key vocabulary words here. We have neutralized and we have reconciled. And this goes back to the concept of Kyriba being a balance builder. So if you recall yesterday, we said Kyriba only cares about, and Kaylee, I think you summarized this nicely, Kyriba only cares about itemized transactions, right? That's the only information that they're going to push into their cash calculation, right? We drew this up yesterday. Do it again real quick. Transaction 1, transaction 2, transaction 3, and then summary. Let's say these are all credits. 100, 200, 300. How many dollars did we bring in today? That's right. I saw Michael. You can hop off mute if you want. I'll just read your lips. Otherwise, it's all good either way. $600, right? So what transactions do we actually want to count in the cash module, or what ones do we want Kyriba to consider when building the balance? You can tell me the rows.
Only
6,
the
7, 8.
transactions.
6, 7, 8, exactly. So we want this to count, right? And we want this to not count, because we don't want to show that we have $1,200 when in fact we only have $600. So how do we, Kyriba doesn't use the words count and not count. Kyriba uses two different words in the bank module. For the ones we want to count, it's called reconciled. For the ones we don't want to count, it's called neutralized. Lo and behold, neutralized, reconciled. let me pivot on the status. And then let me pivot on the BTC description. Again, pivots are super useful, so we want to get used to using them. What codes did we neutralize? Well, what do they all share? Total, right, exactly, Josh. They all have the word total. Is this appropriate? Absolutely, right? Because we don't want neutralized equals don't count. What do we not want to count? Summaries, totals. Look at what reconciled. One thing is incorrect here. Two things are incorrect here. Which ones?
Are they the two balances?
Yes, exactly. Because balances, or if they get counted, they just so happen to be 0, so it was a moot point. But nonetheless, if they're counted, then they're going to be double counting, right? Because if we think of this would have said we had a balance of 600. And if we counted this, then you're counting these 4 numbers, right? And that's not good because that shows 1200. We would want this to not count. So one job is to make sure that we're neutralizing the appropriate BTCs and reconciling the appropriate BTCs. Okay, that's going to allow us to make sure that the data that flows downstream is correct and that there aren't going to be any discrepancies between the balance Kyriba says we have and the balance the bank says we have. Does that make sense? Totally tracking?
Yes.
Cool. Now, there are some ways to neutralize transactions. We talked about one yesterday, but we didn't explicitly use the word neutralize. So let me just hop back to it real quick. One way that we can tell the system, hey, neutralize this, don't count it towards our cash position, is by checking these boxes, right? Because we already said, if it's a summary, don't count it. So by checking this box at the BTC level, we're telling the system code 100 for BAI is a summary. Therefore, do not count this towards our cash position. When you check these boxes, what the system says is, sure, no problem. When we see BAI code 100, we will neutralize it, thereby withholding it from the cash calculation. We'll talk about other ways that you can freeze or neutralize BTCs that are summaries, but this is the one that we reviewed or glimpsed at yesterday, and I wanted to make sure that you saw the implications of clicking this box. Make sense? Questions? Okay. I'm out of coffee. I'm devastated right now. Okay. Cool. Other information here. Reference. This comes right off the bank statement. Particularly useful when it's a check. You can tell this is likely a check. Why? It just looks like the appropriate amount of numbers for a check. And then if I scroll to the left, it's a plus 275. Hey, what's a 275? Oh, this is actually ZBA credit. So I actually just put something in here that looked like a check number. Forget what a check is. Check is 470. Okay. But often the reference, we really only care about it when it's a check because it'll be the check number. Otherwise, it's usually just a string of random numbers and letters that the bank uses as some kind of counter, but is usually meaningless to us. Then we have our account. Again, this is just one account, but if you had a dozen accounts that you were querying, you'd see each one here. Lastly, we have the description. So the description, remember in the when we were building our mapping rules, description really means just a very short version of a description. And then the complementary info, which is in the additional tab, is this full language. So remember when we were building out our mapping rules and I said, and everyone made a rule that said like, if the description is Clearsulting, and I said, I know that sounds like it makes sense, but it actually needs to be complementary info. You guys remember that from yesterday? We had to change all our rules. Well, this is why. If you look at a description off the bank statement, you're only getting about the first 30 characters, and then it just cuts off. If you want Kyriba to scan all the information, the tag in Kyriba is complementary info. So if Clearsulting were written here, okay, Clearsulting, Kyriba would find this if you said search the complementary info. Kyriba would not find it if you said search the description. Does that make sense now?
Yeah. So if we have like a very long description, it just needs to go in the additional box and Kyriba will like auto cut it off. Does that make sense? I worded that really poorly.
Can you rephrase
like
that?
Yeah, so instead of adding like a description and the complementary information, if we have a lot of information, we just need to put the complementary information.
Yeah, don't
Okay.
ever add the description. It's unfortunately, it's enticing, but it's misleading.
Okay.
So I would never create a rule that says if bank description, because complementary info is description plus everything else. So if you just hit this one, complementary info encompasses everything that you'd find in bank description.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we could say, just to be clear, if we built a rule that says if complementary info says this, right? Look here, you see that that language is already in the complementary info, so this rule would apply. So that's what I'm saying, like the complementary info is description plus extra. So it's everything, whereas description is just the first 30 characters. So if you have anything that goes beyond character 30, and I'm not sure if it's 30, but it's around 30. If you have anything that goes beyond character 30, it's not going to work because Clearsulting is only in the additional info. It's not in the description. So long story short, never use description, always use complementary info, and then your rules will work if they apply. Okay, and then anything else we want to talk about? Lots of other information here. You could see which BTC set you're using, but that should be self-evident because BAI and MT940 look very different. You can also see what time the system grabbed the bank statement. I loaded this on a Saturday. That's why it's saying the 16th. And you could see what I was doing on my Saturday morning. So that's why you have a timestamp associated with it. Okay. Does this make sense? Any questions, concerns to show you everything you'd expect to see and more? All right. So let's go to the integrated transaction screen. How are we doing on time here? Okay. If we go to this integrated transaction screen, what are these two things called? Someone jog my memory.
Templates.
Very good. What are templates?
They're like a defined query.
Mm-hmm. Defined set of parameters that queries something. Good. What is this one doing? What should it be doing based on the description?
Searching the last 24 hours.
Perhaps not the last 24 hours, but anything on calendar date 1/18, right? So let's look at how this one's set up. So first and foremost, this screen's a little different from what we've seen previously, but You'll see this screen about 1,000 more times on this bootcamp, so let's just get used to how it's laid out. Again, we're building a query, right? So the first thing, if we look at our title, right, we want to make sure that this query actually does what it's supposed to. What accounts do we care about for transactions integrated today?
All accounts?
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because it's not transactions integrated today for US accounts, right? Or Bank of America transactions integrated today. It's all accounts. So the first option we have is to filter by entities. Do we want to do one account or multiple accounts? Well, Josh just said we want to do all accounts, therefore it's multiple. And then we have an option of how we want to select our entities. So you can see here we selected all accounts, right? Just as Josh said. If we want to build a different template called Bank of America accounts, which one will we select? Which box would we select?
Bank.
Cool. Then you can see this box pops up in the middle. We're going to click select. I'm going to click Bank of America. I'm going to click approve. And now I have a query that says, show me my Bank of America accounts only. Not what we want to do for this template, but we might want to save these settings for a different template. So it's good to know how to do it. Okay. Period tag. What are we doing? Transactions that integrated today. So what's our start and end date? Today. And then what type of data are we looking at? We're looking at the transaction date, the value date, integration date, statement date, or collection date. We talked about transaction and value date. Integration date just means what day did they load in the bank module? So today. Statement date is what is the date on the bank statement? So prior day would be the 17th if it came in today, right? Because prior day is always minus one business day. And collection date means what time did the system pick it up? Usually synonymous with integration date, but not always. So this is appropriate, right? This matches our name. Range. Range allows us to select a specific amount range. So if somebody was saying, hey, we issued a wire yesterday, we don't really know what the amount was. We think it was between like $500 and $600. Maybe there's some fees. Can you find it quickly? We'd say, sure. And then we'd narrow down our results to only show us 500 and 600. Or a client said, hey, we issued a check. We issued 3 checks between check number 1200 and 01205. Can you show me those checks? Sure. The system will search the reference for these values and find between 1200 and 1205. This only works for numeric. This had because it has to count between minimum and maximum. So no alpha characters can go in here. Options. For now, we'll get back to this later. All this should be checked. Right now, we want to filter on any transaction integrated today. So we're going to include both prior day and intraday. What transactions do we want? So you could see we can include transactions and the detail associated with them. Should always check these two. We could see any summary, or we could exclude summary. Float, we'll get back to that another time. And then you can include or exclude initial balances and final balances. So you could see if somebody said, like, show me the wires that happen between $500 and $600, we'd probably turn all this stuff off and just look at transactions in detail, because these aren't going to tell us, these aren't going to give us the answer. And then lastly, this box you should always check on. If you don't check this concatenate description and complementary info, what you're going to see what do I do here? Remember how long our description was on our previous view? If you choose not to click that button, you're only going to get the truncated description. And that's not very helpful, right? So we should always check that box on, and that's going to give us a full description because it's going to include this complementary info. And now look at the difference, right? Much richer. So if you wanted to query Clearsulting, you'll actually see the results here. All these have Clearsulting. Okay. Okay. You could also filter based on a BTC. So in that wire example, I would probably click which BTCs do I care about? Multiple. I would search wire. And I would take these. I don't know why 495 isn't showing up. And take these because I know these are wire codes. In this instance, we're doing all transactions, not some. So I'm going to select all. And then lastly, some clients like this, I particularly don't, but you can color code transactions. So if we want debits to be red, credits to be green, I feel like this turns it into a Christmas tree. But you'll see what I mean, and you can let me know. You could also highlight or flag amounts that are too high or too low for your liking. So if we had like a payment, debit superior to, we could say like $500 and just see how that looks. All right, get ready. It's gonna look a little rough. So you can see here our credits are colored in green, our debits are colored in red. And let me tweak that a little bit. Let me do $800 or 1,000. I'm saying show debits, flag debits that are above $1,000. So you can see this debit is just red, $738. It's below that threshold. And the ones that are flagged in red and yellow are above that threshold. So you can really play around with colors here as well. What do we think? Yay or nay to Christmas? I'm gonna make an executive decision and turn that off. All right. Now, that is our simple template here to show transactions that integrated today. I didn't load any statements today, so when you run this one, it's blank. As you may have noticed, I was just kicking back the date to show things that integrated on Saturday to see these 16 transactions. Why don't we take a minute and make sure we're comfortable with this? So let's all build a template here. Can you guys add a new template? You could call it your initials. Let's do 195 and 495s. Just do this, right? So build a template that shows me all transactions that are 195 and 495 from the past year. Do it just for country US and only show end of day. And if you want to make the, you can color code debits as well. Okay, let's take 5 and put that together. And I just sent that to the chat.
I think I'm good.
Cool, great. Do we want to give everyone another minute, or are we all ready?
I need like 1 more minute.
No problem. Let me go. I'm gonna step away for 1 minute as well. Okay. Anyone want to take the screen and share?
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone can see this.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, so I started off entities, added country, USA. Then I went to period.
One issue on that first page, anyone can spot it? It's kind of sneaky.
This.
Yep,
Um,
because otherwise, Kyriba, if you select single account, you see where it says account towards the bottom of your screen? Kyriba will look for you to populate something in that box.
okay.
If you select multiple, then it expects you to populate something in that box in the center.
This.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it. And then with period, I did this minus
Excellent.
365 for a full year.
Good.
Didn't do anything on the range.
Mm-hmm.
Just end a day, no intraday.
Two suggestions here. The top box, check all those boxes for cash rack. We'll get into what each means later. No need to go through those now, but they need to be checked on. By default, they should always be checked.
Oh.
And then that one as well. Yep, very good.
Yep. And added 195 and 495 for incoming and outgoing.
Very good.
Multiple color. I just said debit should be red.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Can you save it? Now, real quick, you have this on private.
Oh,
So, and that's fine. So if somebody, here, let me take the screen real quick. So if I go to my integrated transactions, notice I don't see yours. Whereas Josh's was set to public, so I can see his. So this is a good example of how these different boxes function. So if you lock everything down to private, it means only you can see it. You can make it public so everyone can see it, or you can use a user group, so only a select group of users can see it, and we can define those later. There are different, these different fields drive different elements in Kyriba. We'll get into those in a little bit, but for now, I just want us to see the behavior of private versus public. The way you can change that is clicking this gear and select change entity code, and then it will open up these authorization screens.
okay.
The other thing you could do from this drop down is click copy. And this will allow you to take the settings that were on this template and maybe just tweak them. So maybe I want to build one that's US plus Canada. And then save that, right? But otherwise preserve all the settings. So that's one way to kind of accelerate the template creation. Lastly, when you're done with this, you can delete it, but let's use one of yours real quick. Just click Kaylee's. So this looks good. Perfect. Just to give you an example of what would have happened, Michael, when you had the single account clicked, remember, was the first thing you looked at, and I said it's looking for this box. If you click go here, you're going to get this error. You might want to just screenshot this error because I bet you'll see it and you'll say, oh, shoot, I saw this once before. What does it mean? Kyriba thinks you didn't include an account because you didn't fill in this box. Right?
Right.
So same thing, vice versa. If you did multiple selection, or let's say you did single account, pick this one, and you think you're selecting the single, you think you're just using the single account, but you have multiple selected, Kyriba is going to throw you the same error because when you select multiple, this box should populate. When you select single, this box should be populated. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Templates are clear. Great. Okay. This screen shows us everything worked well. Bank statement, if we go back to yesterday's presentation, let's see. Banks sent a bank statement to the hub. Hub matched the statement identifier to existing accounts. Bank statement integrated and went into integrated transactions. What we didn't talk about is two things. One, what is the process that actually pulls the bank statement from the hub into the bank statement module? And two, what happens if the bank statement doesn't integrate? Okay, so let's just circle back to this diagram, make sure every step along the way makes total sense. And we see how it's built, nuts and bolts in Kyriba. So starting from this piece of the diagram, we saw that the bank statement loaded successfully, but we didn't really talk about how. So what is the mechanism that pulls the bank statements from the hub to the bank statement module? It's very, very simple, but you just need to know where it sits for your test. In the bank statement module, we have this process tab. And the first tab is bank integration. This is for prior days. The next option is intraday bank integration, and this is for intraday. All you need to know is that there is an automatic process for prior day called auto integ. It needs to be named auto integ, and it will be set up when you build this, build a new database. You can just load this template automatically. So it's called auto integ. You could see that is the process that it needs to be called. Okay, and what this does is it just looks at a basic date range. You see this isn't very complicated, saying show me anything from like 12 days ago, 5 business days ago, through today that integrated that's in the hub, and the system will try to pull it down and integrate the file. Okay, so this is the process between hub and Kyriba application. For prior day, needs to be auto integ. For intraday, it needs to be called auto intra. Very rarely do these codes actually matter, but for bank integration, it's very important that these are the codes. And this is a totally automated process. So if I try to run it manually, it actually tells you, hey, this auto integ process is for automatic bank integration. If you want to run something manually, use a different template. So key takeaways here. Auto integ loads prior days from the hub. Auto intra loads current day or intradays from the hub. One very crucial button, almost certainly will be on the test, is when you set up this template or when it's set up, you need to make sure that on this main screen where you set up your authorization, that this box is checked. What does this say? Use this template to integrate files automatically. Well, we certainly want to do that, right? We're integrating bank files automatically. And then you need to authorize it to run on behalf of a user. Always select admin. We'll talk about why later, but this is absolutely 100% essential. If you do not check this box off, you will not get any bank statements in the system. Clear?
Yes.
Does it have to be on behalf of the admin?
It should be, yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, the admin is not usually a user. It's not usually a physical person. It's just a user. So we usually run processes on behalf of admin because users can leave a company, right? I can leave Clearsulting, you can leave Clearsulting, and that should not stop our operations in Kyriba, right?
Okay.
Whereas the admin is not a person, so it's not going to leave. So the only way the admin leaves the system is if the whole company stops using Kyriba and decommissions the system altogether. So this is control from a business continuity perspective. Make sense? Okay. Cool. So it's in the hub. Bank statement module gets sent down when auto integ runs, and one of two things can happen. We saw the first thing, the green integrated transactions load, so no problems. And now we're going to look at the yellow. Transactions did not load, so what happened? So if your setup is incomplete, you will probably have rejected transactions. Where do you see those? Excuse me. Inquire, rejected transactions. Usually we'll just have one search here. You can create multiple filters or multiple templates for this purpose. We'll just run this one. And I pulled up a lot of historical information just to show you what this looks like. We'll explore some rejections live. But what we're seeing here is a 3-paned screen. This is the first time you're seeing a screen like this, but the system is actually built pretty consistently, so other modules have a very similar view. At the top, we see all our different files that reject it. So you can see this account has been rejecting for weeks, right? On 1.2 it rejected, on 1.3 it rejected, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, etc. So I can click on one of these files, and what you'll see is the second and third panes are going to populate. Okay, second pane populates. So these are the transactions where one of these transactions led to an error. You could see the top one has an error code. So then I can click on this one, and the bottom pane will tell me, what does error code 90 represent? And this is saying your initial balance date does not match the final balance date of the last integrated statement. So we tried to load statements out of order, and the system said, hold on, you're doing, something is off. The chronology is off, right? You loaded a statement for, let's say, February 1st, and now you're loading January statements. Are you sure you want to do that? There's a control in place that will say, let's put these in the rejection queue and make sure you want to load old statements first. If you want to, you can force this statement to go through. If you don't want to load this, if this was truly something that we loaded by error, you could just delete the statement that you don't want to load. We're going to work through the screen in detail in a little bit, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for what the rejection screen looks like and why transactions will fall here. So first reason is continuity is off. So we're loading statements out of order. That's an error code 90. Can anyone think of, based on yesterday's call where we talked about the bank setup, what are some other reasons you think a statement might reject? thinking about mandatory setup for bank statements.
Maybe an invalid BAI code,
What do you mean by invalid? I think you're right.
like one that doesn't exist in the system.
Yes, exactly. So a BTC for BAI that we didn't set up. So remember yesterday we added one as an example. Well, maybe the bank statement had a 226 and we didn't have a 226 in our database. So the system said, I don't know what a 226 is, therefore the whole statement gets rejected until you resolve the issue. What else? What is another mandatory? BTC is mandatory. What else is mandatory for a transaction? Talked about this a few times, including today.
Is it the statement ID number?
If the statement ID number doesn't match, the system is going to send this unknown account email, right? It won't know what account to tie it to. So it's just going to say, hey, you tried to load account 01234, and that's not in your database. And that's where that account is going to stop. It won't go through this integration process. To go through the integration process, it needs to have a matching statement ID first.
Cash flow code.
Cash flow code, exactly. Yeah, so cash flow code is mandatory for every transaction. So if we're missing a cash flow code, what does that mean? We probably need to update. Where do cash flow codes get assigned? Talked about it today. Top of the call. How do we translate the BTCs into legible cash flow codes?
Mapping.
Yes. So we probably have a mapping rule that needs to be added. Or if we're using the BTC flow equivalents, we need the BTC flow equivalent set up for our new BAI code. So if we said, just take one. Let's say we didn't have 168 set up. Okay, 168 is a credit. Therefore, the flow code associated with 168 is plus ACH or ACH plus. Okay, good. So there are a variety of reasons that a bank statement could reject. And now you're seeing why we spent so much time talking about the bank module setup on last call and why you're going to teach the client the bank module setup. It's not just like fun information about the nuts and bolts of Kyriba. It's essential to rectifying errors as they come up. We need to say, oh, okay, an 03 code says missing BTC. I know exactly where to go. I need to add a BTC. An 06 code says missing cash flow code. Okay, that's a mapping rule. Let me add the rule. So on and so forth. Okay. All right. A little over as usual. So a couple things we just need to talk through. Reports. So we said bank module, if the statement ID matches and we go through auto in tag, we can land in one of these two colors, reject it or integrate it. But how do we know that something actually integrated or rejected? Are we just going to check both screens every day to make sure nothing rejected? We could. It's kind of annoying though, right? Like we want to know right away if there's a problem. We don't want to just trust that we're going to click into the screen to see if there's anything sitting waiting for resolution, right? So Kyriba has a resolution for that. And there are some key reports that can be run automatically each day to tell you the status of your transmission of bank statements. Okay, so let's go to the report library for the first time. You could see what that report looks like. So just to be super clear before we dive in, report library has a whole variety of reports. The first one we're going to look at is the bank statement, bank connection status report. And again, this is used to monitor the status of our bank file transmissions. did we get the statements we expected to see today? Or was there an error that we need to go and fix? Okay. We could take one of these. Let me just take this ad hoc one. We're going to see a lot of rejections since this is a dummy database, and that's okay. Let's just look at what this report's showing us. One sec. Give you some good values so you can see what those mean. Okay. So here's the status. So ideally we'd get this every single morning, and it will show us the status of every account that we're expecting to receive in Kyriba. So working left to right, you could see it gives you your full bank account number, then your Kyriba account code, the currency of that account, and then these two very crucial columns. Connection status. This tells us, did we receive the bank statement today? Did the file come to the hub? Okay. And you have a variety of answers here. Never received. I hope that's self-explanatory. What does that mean? Statement has never, we've never received the statement for this account. So maybe this account was closed before we added it, right? Before we added it in Kyriba. Maybe our account number is wrong. Maybe there should be a leading zero here, and we haven't been paying attention to the report Kyriba sends every morning saying, hey, you need to change this account number. Remember that one? We talked about that yesterday. This one. Or maybe the bank never set this account up to be included in the prior day file. So never received means we never got it. Okay. Next option, not received. What does that mean? What's the difference?
Maybe that it has been received before, but not today or not yesterday.
Yes, not today. Exactly.
Okay.
Very good. Not today. So that's exactly right. So that means, okay, our setup is probably fine. In Kyriba, our account ID is probably right, but something's wrong with the transmission, right? So there's a connection problem, or maybe the bank discontinued their reporting and we need them to fix that immediately. So not received is a problem. Not received is usually more a problem than never received. Maybe there's a reason we're never receiving these accounts, but not received means something broke that was working. And then received, that's a good status, right? That means it came in to the hub, and the system was able to recognize the bank account number, the statement ID, so then it pushed it downwards. Okay. So that's the first column. So interpreting that column is very important. Just see if I'm missing anything here. There's one other. Let me do this. Let me color code this for y'all. Red looks a little extreme, but now let's just do red. So these are bad, right? Never received. Why didn't we ever receive it? Not received, probably the worst. Why did it break today? These, on the other hand, are good. So received is self-evident. We got the file. Everything's great. What do you think no movement means? It's not exactly self-evident. Anyone want to take a guess, knowing that this is a good status?
Nothing happened in that account, maybe?
Yes. Did we receive a file?
No.
We did. We actually did. That's why it's a good status. So the file had two rows, most likely. It said initial balance, say $400, closing balance, $400. So this tells us, got a file, no transactions to report, but the transmission is fine. Some banks want to only send us bank statements when there's movement. Can you imagine why we push back on banks that have that philosophy? So a bank would say, nothing happened, so we're not sending you a bank statement.
Because, I mean, the fact that nothing happened is still a statement of that day, I think. And you
Right.
need all the records.
What would happen to our status report if the bank did not send this? What would the status be?
Not received?
Exactly. And not received raises alarm bells, right? So we'd say, oh no, were there transactions that occurred this day for this account? And now we have to figure out why the bank didn't send it. Or did the bank just not send it because there was no transactions and they don't send it when there's no movement? See how there's ambiguity there? And now we don't know if there's a problem or not. So this is like a false alarm, right? So that's why we tell the bank, regardless of activity, send us a bank statement every single day. And if there's no movement, fine, no problem. But if we don't know that there was no movement, then we have to investigate. And that's where things get very manual and tedious. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's connection status. So to make sure that's hyper clear. Statement delivery. There's a couple options here. There's, let me go to our report here. Okay. Let's just do this one. So if it says ever received, it's always going to say not pushed. So received means we were able to obtain the file from the hub and push it downwards. You can think of pushing as like this process where bank auto integ is working, right? It's like being pushed from the server into Kyriba. So not pushed means there was nothing to push, and that makes sense, right? There's no file. So if you see never received and not pushed, these two are always going to be paired together. Not received and not pushed, same idea, nothing to push down. For files that were actually received, you should always see a status of integrated, right? That's what we expect, whether it's no movement or received. If it says not pushed, that means the process that runs the pushing of the file is not set up correctly. So that means they're stuck here, right? Because they're supposed to get taken from the hub, pushed into the bank module. If they're not pushed, well, we probably need to check out auto integ. Maybe we forgot to check that box that runs the process automatically. Okay. You guys with me? You could also see a status that says pushed. That means the system is in the process of pushing the file. When you loaded this report, it just wasn't done. And usually the status will change within 5 minutes. So you just ran the report at like you caught the system while it's working, basically. So usually 5 minutes later, you rerun the process, you rerun this report, and it'll say integrated. Okay. Then the other two statuses, integrate it and reject it. Integrate it means it's obviously a good status. I hope that's clear. Integrate it means we can see these transactions where.
In the integrated transactions tab.
Exactly, in the integrated transaction screen in the bank module. Exactly. The first place we were looking where you all built out your templates. And reject it means what? Where can I find these?
Reject the transactions tab.
That's right. So it's okay if it's self-explanatory. You just want to be super clear, right? Exactly, reject transactions. So my question earlier, is there going to be something that prompts me to go to this rather ugly screen each day? Yes. And what prompts me is this report where I can see column E says, hey, you got some files, but they reject it. So now I say, oh, okay, now I have work to do in the bank module. I have to figure out the rejection reason, fix it, and then get that statement into the system. Make sense? So bank
I kind of
connection
have,
status. Yeah.
just I guess a more general question. So obviously, like clients have access to all of this, but when you say banks send us the bank statements, are they uploading them directly to Kyriba or do we get them and upload them?
So it's an automated process,
Right.
this piece. So the bank has a direct connection to Kyriba's server
Okay.
and will transmit the files automatically each morning via some job that they schedule. So they basically put the files out for us to grab, and there's basically a script that will grab the file, process it. If it matches, then the processes start working like in the application. So this is all automated, no intervention needed.
Okay. But banks have to have access to Kyriba too.
And we set that up. Yep.
Okay.
So we have connectivity experts that liaise with the banks. Anytime you're on a project, you're going to figure out what banks are involved, their stakeholders. And then we have bank calls where we talk through the connectivity details. They'll give us like a username and password. We'll load it in Kyriba, and that will allow the exchange of information to happen seamlessly.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so this is a key report, a key control. Let's talk a little bit about how this thing is built. So I'll just load this one up. You could see this entities tab, same as what we saw before, right? You're going to see a lot of repetition, which is good. Presentation tab. So here are those different statuses we talked about. So we can load this, we can have this report run every day that will show us the status of every single account. What some clients like to do though, is they say, don't show me if it was received and integrated, or don't show me if it was integrated. Just show me if there were problems, right? Something I need to do. Because otherwise, if you get the same report every single morning and it's always good, 99 days, chances are what's going to happen on the 100th day, you're going to say, oh, that report's fine. I don't need to look at it. And that's the day something's going to break, right? So we can set this report to say, don't show us the good results, only show us things that are going to require us to intervene. Make sense? Okay. With reports, you have customizable columns. So we can choose which columns to include in this report. You can see these are the available options. If we want to change a column, if we want to show a column or hide one, all we have to do is double click where it says show. You can see I'm going to double click on date right now, and it's going to go from yes to no and no to yes. Okay. You can also rearrange my columns. So if I want the bank to come first, I can just drag it up. And I can even change the width, but usually the width is fine. But you can double click and make that a little smaller or larger if needed. Okay, so this is something new on templates specific to reports usually, column selection. Two other tabs, question? No? Two other tabs, extremely important. Output. The output allows you to publish a report via email. So if somebody runs this report, I can click publish. I can set this up so I click publish, and then I say mail it, and I can mail it to any of y'all. So I can mail this report to Josh right now. If your email is set up, Josh, you should get an email in about 15 seconds if your email was correctly keyed in for your user. I could also set this up to send to a user group. So if we built a group called like Bootcamp or something, I could put all of us in it and I could send it to the Bootcamp group. So this is the first piece of getting this report to arrive in someone's inbox each morning, so that as soon as they wake up, they have an email from Kyriba saying, hey, all your accounts loaded correctly, or here are the accounts that were problematic today that you have to fix. So that's very important. You can also do things like customize the email subject. So you could say like Kyriba rejection alert. If you set this up just for rejections, you could say like, please go to reject a transaction screen and resolve all errors, something like that, if you wanted to. Then the last piece, formatting options. The one thing I would stress here if you're sending this via email, don't send it via HTML. Send it via Excel. Just easier. Okay. Josh, you get an email?
Yeah, I did.
Cool. Excellent. So this is the bank connection status report. And this is a good overview of just how reports look in the system when we're building templates. Questions, concerns? Am I moving too fast, guys? You got to keep me honest here. I've done these trainings 100 times, so sometimes I move too fast. So let me know. Can someone just make me feel good and tell me what it is that we just showed and why we have a status report? Like what's the purpose?
That
Make
one just
sure
lets us view all like rejected and integrated accounts, whether we received them, didn't receive them, no movement, and the template on how to adjust what we would like to see every morning and how to receive it.
Bingo. All right, awesome. I'm being clear. Good job. Thank you. That's report number 1. That's a key control. So we talked about, did the files transmit from the bank to Kyriba's hub? Did they integrate successfully? Those are 2 key controls that are accomplished through this report. What is the other thing that we've been talking about quite a bit, saying like we want to make sure that the bank module is set up right so this key output is met and that there are no variances or discrepancies. What is that? What are we talking about here? What concept? That was a vague question, but let's say if we.
Are you talking about like balancing so we don't have any variances?
Yeah, I'm talking about balance building. So how do we know the balances are correct, right? We can manually rec it off, right? We can reconcile it. We can go through this very simple example, right? If we have 3 transactions, we could say, oh, okay, it's sums to 600. Bank said it was 600. We have a match. But if you have thousands of counts with hundreds of thousands of transactions, no one wants to manually reconcile, right? This is why we have a system to do that for us. So the second report that we're going to review solves a very key question. And that question is, how do we know that Kyriba's calculated balance equals the balance reported by the bank? So the bank tells us what our balance is. Kyriba calculates what our balance is. And we need to make sure those 2 numbers are totally in sync. If they're not, something's wrong, and we need to understand why and fix it. Does that problem statement make sense before we get into how we solve for it? Cool. All right. So what report allows us to confirm there are no variances? We're going to leave the bank statement module report, and we're going to go to cash daily. And this report is called the Bank Cash Balance Variance Report. Sounds like what it is, right? The bank module gives us one balance, right? Reported by the bank. Cash module gives us another balance reported by Kyriba. We need to make sure those balances are in sync. Otherwise, we would say there's a variance between them. And this report alerts us if there are indeed any variances. So let's load one of these really quickly. That's pretty interesting. This is new. Let's just give you a quick look at this report, and then we'll similarly dive into how it's constructed. Okay. You know what? Let me make one tweak here because I have data for the 12th, so that might be helpful. You all feel like you're learning so much more than expected? Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? And you went in here totally blind, and now you already know how to build one module end to end. Okay.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
You said we're gonna be doing this for clients. Are we gonna be taking them like through a full boot camp where we do this all in a row, or is it gonna be broken out in like smaller segments?
What do you think?
I feel like the smaller segments.
Clients don't sign up for boot camps, unfortunately. Maybe one day. Sorry, let me do one other thing here. Yeah, this will be broken down through a variety of working sessions. Make sure the client's super comfortable. We would never want to inundate them with information like this. I'm inundating you with information because we have a couple weeks to review this independently, come back with questions. Clients, it's more of a marathon than a sprint. All right, here we go. Okay. Let me just mock one of these up for y'all so we can see a couple key differences here. Just start this one. All right, so here's our variance report. Let's study this first account first. Talk about what is included in this report and why each row is important. So I'm going to give you a little explanation here. So for each account, we have four different rows, all of which serve a very key purpose. The first one is saying, what is the balance, the final balance, reported on the bank statement itself? This comes from the hub. So when the statement is going through the integration process, the bank statement balance can be extracted right at the stage before it even starts integrating into the bank module. Okay. So the system scans the file and says, okay, we found a match for this account. This is what the bank statement balance was. It was 31 bucks. Okay. This comes from the raw data itself. The bank ledger balance is the balance that comes from the integrated transaction screen in Kyriba. Is there ever a reason these two numbers should be different? Like this one be 31, this one be 32?
Would it be different if some accounts were rejected?
This is at an account by account level though.
Okay.
So yeah, this wouldn't be cumulative. This is just that day for this account. Let me make this black for you, a little easier to see. So no, these two numbers should be exactly the same. This one is just extracted at the hub level. And this one is extracted from the integrated transaction screen, but they're looking at the same row on the BAI or MT940 file. We hop back to our presentation. They're grabbing the final balance. This says initial balance. This is also wrong. They're grabbing the balance from here. It's just at different stages is this number extracted. So at the first level, this bank statement balance, the system is pulling right from this file, the raw data itself. And then at the second level, the system is looking to the actual bank module and pulling the balance from this row. Now, you might be asking, Kevin, you just said these numbers are exactly the same and they come from the same source. Why would Kyriba report them twice? That seems redundant, ridiculous, needlessly confusing. right? You might be thinking that. Maybe now that I verbalized it, we're definitely thinking it. Well, there's a reason. The only time you might be able to see a discrepancy between these two, and this is, Josh, you were sort of alluding to this. If the bank statement rejects, we won't have any detail in the integrated transaction screen, right? Because when the bank statement is going through auto integ, it can go in one of two places. It can either go into integrated transaction screen, where all the data is visible, or it can go in the rejection screen, where all the data is essentially in like a purgatory state waiting to be fixed. So I saw a variance report that looked like this. This dash tells me what?
That it wasn't integrated.
Exactly. But this figure tells me
It was received, maybe?
exactly. Very good. Whereas an account like this tells me what? What is this one telling us?
Would it be received and integrated?
How do we know it integrated? What row needs to be populated to confirm it integrated?
The second row tells us it's integrated.
Yep.
So
Was it integrated? Do we have a number here?
Oh,
No.
no.
No, not integrated. And then we go up a step. Was it received in the hub? Do we have a number here?
No.
You could see that if you're an expert in Kyriba, you actually don't even need that status report we looked at earlier. You can glean all the insights you need from this report just by looking at dashes. We like the status report because it verbalizes or spells out the status for every account. It's easy for clients to understand, but ultimately this report tells us the whole story. So this one says, we never received a file in the hub that matched for this account. Therefore, this is blank. This one says, we received a statement in the hub, but because this row is blank, that means we don't have any data in the integrated transaction screen. We know if a file was received, it can go in one of two places, right? It can either go in the integrated screen or it can go in the rejected screen. Since there's nothing in the integrated screen, that tells us we need to go to the rejection screen to fix that statement's transactions.
So if there is just like a value in the third row, it's never received or not received, or is it?
Well, that's a good point. We wouldn't know that from
Okay.
just this report. Good point. Very good point. No one's ever mentioned that before. I think that's a very fair counter argument to what I was saying earlier.
But you
about
just know there's an
this.
error,
Pardon?
but you still know that
Exactly.
you don't have it. Yeah.
Right. So actually just so this one, this instance means no file received. Therefore, no balance integrated. And I'm spelling this out for you all because this will absolutely unequivocally be all over your test. You need to know how to read this file. So this is option 1. Let's do option 2 now.
Could you share this sheet with us when you're done?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This one would be file received. I'd reject it in rejection screen. Okay. And now let's take this one. And what we didn't talk about is what is this row doing? The third row, flow ledger balance, is Kyriba's calculated balance. So this is the balance Kyriba is running. Okay. So in this instance, Kyriba calculated $31. The bank reported $31. So this bottom row is the variance between the flow balance, aka row 3, and the bank ledger balance, aka row 2. So it's simple subtraction. Is this result what we're looking for? Absolutely. Yeah, because there's no variance. What a variance could look like, just take one more example. Oops, sorry. Would be something like this. Okay. Where Kyriba would say, the bank said we're at 32. We calculate we're at 31. Therefore, this row is populating -1 as a variance. Now, just like we could do in the bank module, just like we could do with that bank connection status report, we can only run this report. We can choose to only run this report when there's a variance. So you're not getting a large report every single day. Remember, if you have hundreds of accounts, this could be a very, very large report. So we can run this to show variances only. So basically, alert me if something's wrong. Otherwise, don't bother me. Right? If everything's good, I don't need to know. And or we can color code the variances so they pop. So if you're including all reports, I would strongly recommend all accounts. I would strongly recommend doing something like this. So the variances jump off the page and they don't get just hidden amongst the sea of information. Does that make sense? Awesome. So 4 key options here. Noise. Okay. This one is file received, right? And integrate it. Calculate it balance matches. Thanks balance. Therefore, no variance, right? Super clear? Lastly, file received and integrate it. Calculate balance does not match bank's balance. Therefore, variance. Any questions?
So basically, any counts that have no movement wouldn't matter here at all.
If the accounts have no movement and we're just assuming that the flow ledger balance was correct yesterday, then yeah, it should be variance free.
Okay.
Right? No movement from the bank, no movement from Kyriba, therefore we remain in sync. Again, assuming that we start at variance free, we'll end variance free. Let me save this for y'all. Throw this in our SharePoint before I forget. Please have this report handy for your test. Memorize how it's structured, because there's 40 questions on your test, and I guarantee you'll see at least 2 or 3 on this, and it'll just be like, why is there a variance? And it's your job to interpret the report.
Do you know how much time we get on the test
3 hours.
for 40 questions?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's 40. It's extremely, extremely hard. The pass rate is like 30%. That's why we're going through this all ahead of your class. So we're gonna need to really have a mastery over this. I know you all can pass with the proper prep, but it's just gonna be a lot of work to make sure we're in a good position to pass.
When do we sit for the first test?
March.
Pretty classic score.
Like the 18th?
Yeah.
Okay,
The 18th, yeah.
thank you.
2 months. More than enough time to pass or to prep for passing. All right. That is pretty much everything we needed to go through. One last piece, and then we'll take a quick break and do some exercises. Importing a BAI file. So I have a file here for us. We can take a look at it in a few moments. I just wanted to be clear about how to actually load it into the system. To load any file, tasks and reports, file import, export. This is very similar to what you all did last night in terms of importing static data. Instead of referential data, we're loading bank statement. So click on import a file. See, we have a template here set up for you. How's it built? It's a bank statement. I'm launching the process automatically. Format is BAIST. That's just the typical way you set it up for BAI statements. You can simply click go, or you can do the quick upload and just drop the file in here. Once you do it, nothing's going to happen. You just have to wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then the statement will upload. And you'll see it either in the integrated transaction screen or the bank rejected transaction screen. Just breeze through that. Does that make sense? Should be very similar to what we did yesterday. All right. So I want to dedicate about 30 to 40 minutes for 2 exercises. So the first, and you can obviously take a break as well. The first is we're going to grab this file. Please download the sample BAI that I put here. And we want to make sure the statement ID matches what's in Kyriba to be able to integrate it. So you all created a bank account yesterday, your US Clearsulting account. Make sure the statement ID matches what you have in your in the system. Then import it into Kyriba. You're going to see some rejections. Let's make sure we resolve those. And then once you resolve it, you're going to reintegrate the file right from the rejected transaction screen. After doing so, the file should be, all the transactions should be available in the integrated transaction screen. So we're going to be doing some on-the-job fixes. This is deliberate to make you hit some errors and make sure we feel comfortable resolving them. Once you do that, give me a heads up. We can work through any issues you have. After that, we're going to create a variance report for your account, and the instructions are here. I'll send these over to y'all via Teams as well. Just make this white font so it's easier to send. So let's work through this now. Give me a holler if you need me. But let's aim to be done by 11:45. Then we're going to talk a little bit about cash, and then we'll probably do a lunch break. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording.